honestly, I did not expect to like this. Not I like the book. Otherwise, we wouldn't have you on because I like you. But I didn't expect to love it. I loved it.
Oh.
And two characters in it, really, that I want to sort of... Your mum, massively. You, of course. All the various mediums. And you call them out. When people are dodgy, you call them out, which is great.
1,000%.
Great.
Absolutely.
It's great that you call them out because that gives some sort of balance to the book. I want to talk about Slugs, and I want to talk about when Henry met Daisy.
Right, okay.
Because I'm fascinated by that regression chapter.
Yes,
Because that guy was different. He was calm. He didn't have anything to prove. We'll get to him in a minute. Tell us about Slugs.
So Slugs, this was, it was so, he was my best friend. So Slugs, obviously, Michael was my best friend who played Slugs in this country. And he passed away, I think, before we filmed series 3. And he'd always had like ongoing health battles, and he had cancer when he was 15, and before he died, he was terrified of dying, and that's what made it worse. And then I got this phone call from him saying, God, I can almost feel the hairs on my arms standing up. But he said, Daisy, I'm not afraid of death anymore. I was visited last night by this kind of like angelic, spiritual kind of being that said, within 7 days, I'm going to have a new body. And he said, so that either means I'm going to, make a full recovery, or, I'm going to be released from this body that's caused me so much pain. And so either way, so that I feel, I don't know, guided, and he died in 7 days,
At 11:59 p.m.
So it said at midnight that he would, that this is what this spirit said, at midnight in 7 days, and his time of death was like 11:59 p.m. It was just extraordinary.
Yeah.
It was extraordinary. And I don't, there's something in that. There has to be. But then I also don't want to be one of those people that's just desperately trying to
Confirmation
connect the
bias.
dots. And then it was like another thing. I'd seen what I thought was an apparition at my last house, and then the doubt sets in, and I thought, God, when I saw it, I was lying on the bed. Did I just fall asleep? And if anybody was going to come back, it would have been Slugs, because he was my best friend, and he knew how much, I wanted confirmation that he was okay. And I was discussing this with Charlie, and before he died, he was such a weird bloke. He was so funny. But and when he died, he said that the only thing that he was gutted about was he was going to miss this festival that was going to be on in Cirencester called the Phoenix Festival. And he loved it because it was free and it was within walking distance of his house. And there was a Guns N' Roses, tribute act that year. So he was really, really...
He said it's going to be really good this year.
Genuinely gutted that he'd missed it. And so... that morning, after having this discussion with Charlie, my partner and I woke up to this rhythmical banging on our bedroom door, kind of like on our bedroom door. Nobody else in the house. We've got CCTV out there. I'm like, the cats, do they have knuckles? Can they do that? They have a sense of rhythm. It wasn't them. And It was the day of the Phoenix Festival. I'm sorry, how can you? It's so extraordinary. And I don't know. I that was my sign from him. I need something clearer. I literally want him to write his name
Slugs.
on the...
Up your game, mate. You were a bit disappointed till that point, weren't you?
Yeah, I was.
Because you thought he was putting a marker down in this conversation you had with him 7 days before he died, or 6 days, 23 hours and 59 minutes before he died, saying, look, don't worry, I'll see you anon. Basically.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And that, for me, was... And the fact that my partner heard it, as well. He was there. We know. That was my confirmation.
All right, tell us about when Henry met Daisy. So this is further on. It's towards the end of the book. And I love this chapter because this is quite...
God, remind me of
No,
this.
it's when you go for the regression.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that was weird.
Because I like this because it's a very flat chapter. I'm not saying it's not interesting. It's very flat in as much as it's very factual, this chapter. Because there's a lot of your character and your brilliant writing and your humour coming through in the other chapters. But this one is basically you recording what happened. And I find it fascinating because in the context of the book, it lands really well for me, this chapter.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us about this guy. Tell us about what you wanted to discover. Tell us about what you did discover, and the fact that he was as surprised at you, but not surprised at what happened, but just surprised at the particular journey you had. He was very calm, wasn't he, this guy?
Yes.
Tell us about Henry.
So I had a past life regression because I mean, I've always been absolutely fascinated by it. And, you know, I was convinced that I was going to be like Henry VIII. Like, I really wanted to be Henry VIII, or at least somebody of like who was important or famous. And I ended up doing this past life regression, which is used for, like, lots of people use it for, you know, therapy. And there's an argument to say, you know, maybe it's putting yourself in a third person makes you be able to kind of tackle issues. But I was sort of struggling a bit with my daughter to connect with her. And so I go back and it was almost like Kodak kind of imagery. I'm put under in like this hypnotic state. And I go back to kind of like the turn of the century. I'm a boy where I've come from quite sort of like an affluent, not super wealthy, affluent background. My mother's passed away, and I'm sent to boarding school. And it's just a very boring story. I go to boarding school. I quite enjoy it. I'm quite good at cricket.
How funny is that?
It's insane. And then I end up just being in a really boring job where I'm just sort of doing sort of trade with other countries with sort of things. It's like a government thing. I mean, just so boring. And then my daughter is apparently my daughter in that previous life was a girl called Polly, who apparently is, you know, meant to represent. She's the same soul as my daughter now, and she just kind of, you know, eloped to Zurich and was like living in an apartment there. It was just so boring.
Well, it's boring but fascinating. It's actually, it's not boring at all. That's not a boring thing. That recollection is not boring. The fact that you were a little boy, the fact that you were good at cricket, quite good at cricket.
Quite good, yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting. You weren't good at cricket. You were quite good at cricket. You went, you know, your daughter went to Zurich. You know, that's fascinating. I mean, what is going on, you know? And the fact that we're even here and I'm talking to you and radio's been invented and here's a book and there's some lights that are on and there's a whole city outside built on soil, and I'm sure one day nature will come back to reclaim this nonsense that we thought was clever at the time. That's all magical.
Oh, isn't it?
Yes.
It is. And just I look at everything and seeing the miracle in everything now. Do you know what? Somebody put it so beautifully, and they say about human beings, like, you know, people go, oh, it's the theory of evolution and we just came from plankton or cells. And somebody said if a hurricane or a tornado went through a junkyard for 300 million years, it will never create a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Like, that is design. You know, that is such a specific design. We are such an incredible design. There's got to be somebody behind that.
There's magic everywhere. There is magic everywhere. And for those people who don't believe in magic, you know, I would say, you know, forgive me for using this phrase, but you're the nutters, because there's evidence of magic everywhere, in every single everything that we ever do.